welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Heaps with myself, Greg Heaps Peterson, now part of the Beeson family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Rob Donaldson. He does such great work over at Underdog Fantasy, also on youtube.com/Rob Donaldson with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. We have to talk about all the madness that we're seeing with these fifth-year guys right now, the teams like LSU that are rolling the dice on these fifth-year guys. Why? Just because you're getting in a former guy that might have been in the G League, you're getting back a fifth-year guy that might not yield a lot of great results for these teams, and we'll take a look at some of the teams that have stayed away from these fifth-year guys that might be able to lend a little bit of value as well. Here in segment number 1, we saw some big news from Big Blue Nation. They signed Mark Mitchell, so we're going to be diving in on that. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have 1 to 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters M maybe does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Very much do beg with you, plead with you. Please do send in these Twitter/X questions because it makes the offseason go by a little bit faster and lets me know what you want to hear on the podcast. Good news is it's been much easier to be able to get through with this podcast here in the month of August. Typically it's a slog and we have no shortage of news right now. So that has been absolutely tremendous, and conference previews are going to be continuing. We're now into the S's with doing the Patriot League a few days ago. So the SoCon, the Sun Belt, the SWAC, we're going to have that coming up in the next few weeks. So that'll be a lot of fun. And along the way, we're going to be keeping things on the up and up with what we're seeing with these fifth-year guys, all these court cases, because we don't know if these fifth-year guys are going to be eligible or not. But we do know that if they are eligible, Kentucky has themselves a nice roster. Mark Mitchell, he averaged last year over at Missouri 18 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists, capable of shooting threes, not necessarily his forte, but he goes on over to a Kentucky team that earlier in the offseason, things were not looking great for them. Getting Milan Mimicevic, for me, was really a needle mover. Still have a few question marks with the backcourt. Zoom Diallo is a guy that was solid over at Washington. I don't know if he's capable of being the main man, but they also have Alex Wilkins. He comes on over from Furman, who is a nice scorer over there, and this team is going to be sacked down low. You've got Malachi Moreno back. Frank Kapadag, he comes on over from Washington as well. Osman Endai as a freshman is going to be really nice in my opinion. Jerome Morton, this guy that's able to pop it from 3-point range, going to be nothing more than a depth piece in my opinion. But all of a sudden, Kentucky probably has a top 10 roster. Are they on par with Florida? No, I would say that they're still behind Texas and Tennessee in the hierarchy of the SEC. But who says that the SEC can't have 4 teams in like the top 12, top 15? I really am starting to feel much more bullish on this Kentucky team. This is going to be massive for them if they do get Mark Mitchell, a guy that was proven in the SEC, a guy that began his career over at Duke. Huge, huge, huge for Kentucky. I thought that they were going to be in on some of these fifth-year guys. They turned out to be, and this is one that I think is a massive needle mover for them. And how about Utah State? I don't think that they're going to be able to overtake Gonzaga out there in the Pac-12, but still, you bring in Dallin Hall, who last year, he was a solid player over at Virginia. He was averaging about 6 points, 3.5 boards, guy that was able to pop it at 32% from 3-point range. Best year came during the 2023-24 campaign when he was over there in the state of Utah over at BYU, where he's shooting about 36%, 9 points, 5 assists as the main facilitator, and even at Virginia, he was a starter that was able to give you 4.5 assists per contest. He's a guy that is going to be really able to flow the offense for Utah State. I don't know if they're quite going to be where they were with regards to the previous coaching regime and all that Jared Calhoun was able to do for them, but you're bringing a guy in Ben Jacobson who spent so long over there at Northern Iowa. He's bringing with them a guy in Will Hornseth who is rock solid, Carson Templin. He stays within the program along with Mason Fosloff, so you've got some good camaraderie. This is going to be a team that's going to be a force to be reckoned with. You've got Sean Feltz, who is 6'11". You've got some nice size. The backcourt needed a little bit of work. Now you've got a nice facilitator to be able to free up Mason Fosloff, to be able to free up AJ Bates as well. A guy that comes over from Louisiana Tech is going to be able to give you some good hard-nosed defense. Ben Jacobson knows what he is doing as a coach. Again, Utah State, do I have them in front of Gonzaga? No, but I think immediately they're going to be a force out there in the all-new Pac-12, and I think that this is a roster that is locked, loaded, ready for bear. Absolutely love that move, and we are seeing so much happening in college basketball right now. Coming up next, how about if we do chat it up with one of our good friends to try to be able to just catch our breath on it all, try to be able to put things into reality, the fact that some of these teams that are bringing in fifth-year guys might have a little bit of issues. We'll be chatting it up with our good friend Rob Donaldson with Underdog Fantasy and the Rob's Best Bet Show on the flip side here on Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beeson Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we've got Rob Donaldson aboard. He does such amazing work over at Underdog Fantasy. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball on the college sports front as well. He's also doing an incredible job with regards to college football as well, trying to make sense of a sport where we are seeing guys with preseason film trying to go back into college football. And we're doing much of the same here in college basketball with guys that played Summer League trying to get back. So it is a very wild landscape, to say the least. He's also doing a great job on the baseball front. So truly a 5-tool player. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at RobDFB, and then over on YouTube.com/Rob Donaldson. Rob, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Greg. And I just don't even know what defines a college athlete anymore at this point. I guess you can just collect the check, go to the pros, go play in the NFL, go get drafted, go to the NBA, go get that bonus check, whatever you want to do, and then immediately just revert right back to college and collect NIL as well. That's basically, in essence, what's going on, but only for certain players in certain states, Greg. What a time.
Yeah, I mean, man, before we dive into any specific states, any specific teams, players, what have you, just what do you make out of, this goes beyond college basketball because I know you do college football. There's many people that listen to this podcast who do college football as well. What do you make out of college sports in general? Because, it's even hard to do college football previews right now, and the opening games start within the next few days. And for college basketball, I feel like I know less about these rosters than I did in mid-April.
As sports bettors right now in the space of college sports betting, this is the most unprecedented time in the history of this. And we went through a whole pandemic, Greg, where we had no crowds. We had no idea if players are going to be eligible or teams are going to be able to play based on COVID eligibility things.
We're trying to handicap the bubble like home court advantage.
Right. Okay, is this person getting stir crazy in a hotel room right now or what's going on? And now we don't even know which players are going to be in the hotel room for these road trips here in a week. So it's just a crazy, crazy time. Heck, even a guy that I think actually falls within the regulated eligibility rules and Rocco Becht at Penn State this is college football. I know we're talking about college basketball in this episode, but Rocco Becht had an interview today where he's saying, yeah, I'm just taking one class. I'm not even sure what that class is. That's basically college sports in a nutshell. College really is just not even necessary. It's just a prerequisite, I guess, to qualify, maybe, quote unquote, maybe. It's a very, very interesting time, and a lot of players that are getting put on rosters right now, I have no idea if we're even going to see them play for these rosters.
Yeah, man, LSU better be hoping and praying that these guys are eligible because, they pick up Donovan Dent, they pick up Sky Clark, they played together over at UCLA. If you have that backcourt, even out there in the SEC, that's pretty good. But for LSU, I think that they might have the widest range of results of any team in college basketball because if these guys are actually eligible, if they actually sign them, I see a world where LSU is a very strong team out there in the SEC. And if they're not, boy, oh boy, these guys are, probably having to sign the two of us right now.
Yeah, three of their probably most impactful 6 contributors, Greg, are guys who fall into this bucket of are they actually eligible? And you could even make a case, I believe, for 4 of their top 7 guys fall into this category. Will Wade has basically said, hey, it's either this or my first year is going to be very, very interestingly terrible. And it's just one of those things where maybe it is the gamble that pays off. What is LSU really losing, right? They've been in kind of mediocrity, if not below mediocrity, for so many years consecutively that I guess you might as well go for broke while there's just no real clear guidance on how you can actually build a roster. And ultimately, I'm not a biggest fan of Will Wade, and certainly his ethical barometer is either broken or non-existent. But hey, I can't fault the dude for at least trying to abuse a system that is worthy of being abused right now.
Abuse a system that is worthy of being abused is such a great way of putting it. And man, it is a wild time to say the least, my friend. And it's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out. And then another team I think is so interesting is out there in the Big 12 with Texas Tech, because if their guys are eligible, Donovan Atwell, JaMychal Stillwell, you're getting back Darren Williams. That is a team that right there looks like they are able to compete for like an Elite Eight. I don't know if quite a Final Four, but I could make the case for a Final Four as well. And those guys aren't out there on the floor. I think it could be a rough season for them.
Honestly, there's a few teams that kind of check off that list. And yeah, Texas Tech is another one where, they have certain players who are very impactful that are absolutely eligible. And if that's the roster, it's a decent looking roster. But if they do truly get a chance at Darian Williams getting back into the fold here, they do elevate into that national title discussion because of who they have. We'll see how, JT Toppin looks coming back from an injury, and also when he comes back from that injury. They're a talented roster on paper, and paper is really just a mixed bag of what do we get. We saw this with Alabama last year, where they obviously brought back Betty Gacko, went into a whole fiasco of whether or not he was going to play. He played for a couple games, and it just got sidelined out of nowhere.
They were worse with him, too.
Yeah, and they were worse with him, right? It was like, okay, you brought in an NBA player. They're going to collect all the boards. Wrong. They're actually going to collect less at a less efficient percentage. I truly don't even know what we're doing here anymore. And I do hope these teams fail so that we just never have to put up with even just this idea being entertained again.
Hey, you bring up something so good. James Nanji, he went from being a part of the Karl-Anthony Towns trade to signing with George Mason in July. Like, you want to talk about hustling backwards, man. That's an Enron-style drop in stock right there. I'm impressed that we've got our good friend Rob Donaldson, who does such great work over at Underdog Fantasy, trying to be right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And how much do you want to be fading some of these teams that are bringing in these guys late? Because I think it's one thing when you have like a Philip Borovichinen situation over at Xavier. Yeah, he's not on the roster right now, but he was the team's top rebounder last year. He's been training with the team. There's no chemistry loss right there. Even like MJ Collins, following his coach Jared Calhoun over from Utah State, knows the system, but he seems like, looking at you, LSU, they're going to be trying to bring in some of these guys late, like even Texas Tech again, bringing back Darian Williams. He knows the system. That'll work out fine, but these teams are trying to sign these guys in August, might be September. Heck, they might be trying to sign guys in like November/December, the way that things are going right now. Those are teams I feel very content to fade, especially if they're trying to bring in the G League guys, because we saw that just pretty much be a lead balloon last year.
Well, Greg, it's very, very interesting because with college sports, and this has really been the transition over the last few years in particular, but it used to be continuity wins. If your coach stays and you build up guys from their 17-year-old high schoolers, they come into your program, they graduate at 21, 22 years old as a unit, this uniformed unit under one mission, and everybody's having that season that encapsulates all the work coming to fruition. That doesn't exist anymore. And not even just college basketball, college football, really anything, because there's always money to be had by jumping ship before necessarily you're developed by the program that you lay within at that time. When you're talking about all these teams that are literally confining rosters right now in August, we're recording this on August 22nd. That's crazy that players are still being added to rosters. How does that mess with unity? I don't know if it does. Like, I genuinely don't know if continuity matters anymore, if gelling with your teammates matters anymore, or are we just literally watching AAU ball with college basketball programs and their logos on the front, their fan bases being kind of what encapsulates them, but truly just really no identity for what we're actually seeing on the court. Like, I just don't even know anymore. So it just makes for a very interesting thing of, it's a case study. You got to watch how this stuff plays out. And I'm going to be kind of making notes next to every single one of these teams that are following down this path and kind of seeing what happens. I just don't even know how to gauge it at this point.
Yeah, it almost feels like when you're playing pickup basketball at the YMCA. It's like, oh, I saw that guy in accounting once. Oh boy, great chemistry. It's just absolutely wild what we've been seeing there. And I mean, does that cause you to upgrade / downgrade some of these teams as of right now as well? Because I do take a look at some of these teams that have a chemistry like Michigan State. They have not been going after any of these fifth-year guys as of right now. I applaud them. Now, Florida has the Denzel Aberdeen situation, but it's not like they were trying to sign him in August. It's not like there's any sort of like chemistry issues there. And I mean, say what you will about Duke, they have not went after any of these guys as well. I feel like the top teams are pretty fortified, and the teams that are the biggest gamble are these teams that are hoping and praying to be able to rise up the rankings with these fifth-year players.
We've seen it at kind of a smaller, more ethical scale, I would say, to a degree, with teams like Oklahoma and teams like Kansas State in recent years, where just stockpiling the biggest names, the best scorers, it doesn't always kind of pan out in your favor, even with, a good-looking roster on paper. Like last year, coming into the season, I could have argued that Oklahoma had the most interesting roster on paper, and they didn't even really make an impact in any regard, whether it was non-con play, in conference.
Hey, they made a big impact in the crowd.
Absolutely. And, it's one of those things where I do think there's an element at play that the teams that do have that little bit of unity, it might not be the same as we saw it 10 years ago, but to your point, a team like a Michigan State, they have the highest floor. But ultimately, do they have the highest ceiling? Almost certainly not, because the teams with the best kind of higher ceiling are those teams that are going out in the market, paying the right guys, and then kind of finding the way to gel when it truly matters. Now, actually gelling with those players is ultimately where all this stuff becomes a real big mess. I think that's how you got to gauge it. Continuity right now in this sport, it's great. It's definitely important. It leads to a high floor. It just caps you out at a certain ceiling when you are going up against those teams that did go out and treat it like a true free agency period. And we'll see what the betting lines look like in certain spots. But I'm kind of willing to take those types of chances with the high floor teams when they're catching maybe a possession or two.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that it's going to be really interesting to see how those games are going to be lined in the first few nights of the season.
Yeah.
Yes, man. I feel like there are going to be some of these teams that if they do end up getting these fifth-year guys all eligible, that they're going to be fades towards the beginning part of the season, towards the end of the season, things round into form, and then they lend themselves some really good value. And is that something that you are going to be trying to focus on towards the beginning part of the season? Because I do think that there's going to be a lot more examples of that than there's even been in the past few years, where these teams are trying to mix and match, and sometimes it never comes together. Looking at you, the Jerome Tang area over at Kansas State Sands, you're number one, where, I mean, they just never really find it. Heck, even Eric Musselman over at USC, they just really never find it with regards to some of these transfers. But I feel like there might be some of these teams that are just big giant fades, even though they've got great talent on paper. But towards the end of the year, they might actually lend some value.
I'm right there with you. Just like we kind of opened this intro with it being a very unprecedented time in college sports, it's an unprecedented time for the bookmakers and the lines for the sport as well. And so if they're just trotting out yesterday's lines or last year's lines or 10 years ago, what the line theoretically would have been, there's a market inefficiency somewhere. There's an angle to be had with the new way of college sports. Now, it might be something like taking the over, because if it is true AAU ball and you have a bunch of guys who aren't unified but are bucket getters, maybe they're not playing defense and they're just chucking up shots, and maybe they are efficient shot chuckers across the board. You got two teams that did the exact same thing of just add the best scorers. We'll figure out the defense later. Maybe that leads to a lot of overs right out the gate. On the other hand, maybe, when you do look at a team like an LSU and think, wow, that's a dominant force. And all of a sudden they're laying 38.5 against a mid-major from who knows where.
Louisiana Monroe.
I'll take Louisiana Monroe just blindly. I don't think they're going to win the game, but to cover these monstrous kind of numbers, you got to be dominant on both ends of the court. If it truly is LSU just putting up 90 and the other team scoring 70 or 60, well, hey, I'll take my cover and go home.
Hey, I am all for taking the points with Louisiana Monroe. They're building something out there in Monroe, Louisiana. So I think that that's a lot of fun. And just we've covered a few teams that have been in the news, what have you. But I mean, with everything that we've been seeing over the last few weeks, is there a team or two that we have not mentioned that you right now have your eye on, and either you feel much more bullish or much more bearish on them? Like, it might be a team that's just not signing some of these guys that you feel better about because they're not. But is there a team or two that's really just catching your attention right now that you're feeling a little bit better about?
There's a lot of different directions that we can obviously go when we're talking about just the recent additions that we've been seeing. Now, I will say this about Chris Jans and Mississippi State. Josh Hubbard, you want to talk about continuity? He's a guy that absolutely is one of the best players in the country, and he has stuck it out at Mississippi State despite absolutely having NIL value to go out there and do something different. And they've been adding players in the interim here. You know, Kamani Hamilton is one of those guys that coming at a high point 2 years ago was a very highly sought after talent. He entertained a lot of high majors, had a weird thing of trying to push for $2+ million in NIL funds is kind of the alleged deal. And that led to a lot of high majors kind of go in a different direction. That's why he signed with UNLV last year. Well, now he's back on the market. He's at Mississippi State, and he's pairing up with a great, player in Josh Hubbard, who's a facilitator, shot maker. And when you look at that roster across the board, it felt like last year they just really, really underperformed relative to the standards that Chris Jans has set. And an SEC where we just really don't know what it's going to truly look like in terms of a hierarchy, don't sleep on a team with a really great coach with one of the best guards in the country. I think ultimately that's going to be a team that I gravitate towards right out the gate.
Yep, and for Mississippi State, they need to do a better job on the turnover front. They weren't really generating a lot of turnovers, and when Mississippi State was at full force, they had those guys like Tolu Smith and company down low. If they're able to be fortified down low, they've got themselves a shot, and we always know that we're going to get a great podcast when you're aboard, because my friend Rob, you're doing such a great job taking a look at this amazing game of college basketball. I know that you're dialed in with regards to college football. You're taking a look at baseball and so much more. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, hey, Greg, it's always a great time talking college hoops with you. And even though we're still talking about really deep off-season stuff, we're closing in on some games, my man. So we're not too far away from actually breaking down lines and whatnot. And at the same time, for those who are wanting to follow my Major League Baseball bets on an everyday basis, kind of leading into college basketball season, Twitter/X at RobDFB, and my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Rob Donaldson. But as always, Greg, I appreciate having me on, man.
It is always great to be able to get Rob aboard. Such a wealth of knowledge, and every single time he joins me, lends amazing insight. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Lars EM, the name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way, that is fine, an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. This is a podcast that has been going on for over 2,400 straight days without a missed podcast, so you know that the consistency is going to be there once we get back in season picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. And here along the way, you're going to get conference previews for all 32 conferences, trying to do as many conferences as humanly possible that will not be impacted by these fifth-year guys, and obviously keeping everything abreast of what we are all seeing with regards to these fifth-year guys. And then once we get back in season, all those picks and all that fun. So appreciate you tuning in today, and I'll be back to you once again tomorrow. Thank you.